All right, so good morning, everybody.
Good morning.
I did realize that we might have missed tea break, but I'm all you have, so. Okay, so what I'd like to do for this session is to introduce something that is very important in context of the forum that we are having today. So, as I was saying, I'd like to introduce something that will be very useful and important in context of what we are doing here today. So, you'll probably hear from many speakers for the rest of this morning and for the rest of today around leadership, around the need to identify talent, etc., etc. Now, everything that you hear is obviously going to be critical in the way you are going to be successful in your organization. The challenge that many organizations have after attending the forum like this and going back in the office is to try to find a way to put that into practice and to try to execute this. So let's see what we can do today with modern technology that might be able to help you along this particular objective. Now, I'd like to, first of all, just mention, my name is Richard, and I come from an organization called Oracle. However, I'm here more to share leading practices than anything else. But however, the advantage of me representing Oracle is that because we got so many customers that we work with all over the world, we have learned the different leading practices from our clients, and we have been able to incorporate these leading practices into our knowledge and obviously into our solutions as well. And of course, being a large organization like Oracle, we also have the ability to invest in significant amount of money into R&D to bring the best technology to our clients. Just a quick mention here, that you'll probably see that in Oracle, we do have multiple product lines. One of the items that we are very proud of is the fact that we are considered leaders in providing talent management solutions as well. So later on, while I talk about some of the leading practices that organizations of ours, our customers, what they are doing in terms of putting the action in place, I'll also be highlighting the use of this technology in terms of talent review and succession. Okay, so you probably heard from the earlier speakers on the importance of identifying leaders, and as part of identifying leaders, of course, you also need to identify talent. And as a result of it, many organizations today are looking at what can they do to put in place a process to review the talent in the organization. Now, this is just a summary slide in a way that summarizes some of the things that you have heard. The need for talent today is a top executive concern, and there are many surveys out there conducted, like for example PwC, the CEO survey, etc., where all of them has all identified that leadership pipeline is a critical component of the organization's success. And it is therefore not surprising that a lot of the more progressive and advanced companies out there, and I'm very sure many of them are also in this room, have now put in place a formal process to understand the different talent that you have in your organization. Now, the challenge of talent review is that in many organizations, it is being done manually. And when you do something manually, it also means that you struggle with scalability, you struggle with involving the larger organization, the larger employee and managers of the company into the process. It also means you struggle with getting the information updated and being utilized for the process as well. And it is therefore not surprising that this might be a representative photograph of what happens before a talent review, where companies actually spend a lot more time doing the preparation than actually doing the value-added activities that follows the review process itself. So what I'd like to share with you instead is that if you are able to utilize technology in your talent review, you will be able to, in fact, not just focus on the review process, but perhaps understand where your talent are and be better placed to understand the bigger picture of the talent distribution across the organization. So rather than just talk about it, the best way, in fact, is to show it to you. Okay, so what I've just done is I've logged into a solution that we have. But like I said, the more important area here is really to share some of the leading practices that you should be considering. So one of the things that people talk about is that when you are doing talent review, you need to involve the managers. You cannot do talent review just by having some senior people sitting in the room thinking about where my talent are and who these talent are and what should we do about them. It is a process that needs to be collaborative. It is a process that cuts across the organization. It is a process that the different line managers or people managers in the organization need to participate as well. So what I'm showing here is an example of how we can do that. So before a talent review can actually take place, where all the different senior people sit down and look at the key talent, what we can do is we can actually involve the different managers who are responsible for this talent and ask them to provide an assessment or update of the key information. So examples of this assessment of key information that the managers could provide are things like, for this talent that we are going to review, what would be the potential rating of the individuals there? Which of these talent would be considered as a high potential employees? Which of these are perhaps medium, and which of these are perhaps the not considered as a high potential employees? Now, for many organizations that I speak to, talent review is normally not something they currently do for the entire organization. Many of them, in fact, feedback to me that they are only doing it for perhaps the top 3% or the top 5% of the organization. And the reason for doing it is not because they do not recognize the value, it is simply because they cannot do better than that. So ideally, what they say is that they want to do a talent review at, for example, at the location level for Jakarta, or they want to do it at the business unit level for all the sales organization, or perhaps they want to do it across certain groups, senior directors and above, etc. So what you are seeing here is merely a population or cohort of talent that we want to review. It can represent the talent in the location, it can represent the talent in the business unit, or in many cases, this could be the top talent across the organization. And what we are seeing here is a listing of the talent and the ability for their managers to provide assessment of the potential, provide assessment of their performance, assessment of the risk of loss. Risk of loss meaning what is the manager's assessment that this person may leave the organization. So typically as the manager, they have a good understanding of the value that the person has within the marketplace, and we feel that this person might be poached or have the tendency to likely to join competitor. They can say there's a risk of loss of being high. Likewise, the manager can also provide a feedback around impact of loss. If this talent were to leave the organization tomorrow, would it significantly impact my bottom line? Would it significantly impact my ability to deliver the project? Would I have a lot of difficulty in finding a replacement? So I can assess the impact of loss to my department as well. So these are the different things that we can involve the manager to provide the assessment. Now, I'd like to move on to the actual talent review process or talent review meeting that will take place. So talent review is a formal process, and this is something that is organized a few times a year, depending on the company. Some companies may organize it twice a year, some of them is once every quarter, and like I said, for those that are truly more progressive, they actually do it at multiple levels of the organization. So when it's time to do the talent review, I'm just going to start this off. In fact, before I do that, let me just explain some characteristics of a talent review. As you can see here, when I'm doing the preparation, and I apologize for those of you who are sitting in the back and the words are a bit small, let me read up to you. There are a couple of things that we can do to set up a talent review. One of the items that we can do is to identify the contents that will be useful for that particular review process. So example here, I'm including the career interests of the employees. I'm pulling in the potential assessment, the competency details, the goals, the impact of loss, all the information that we were involving the manager's feedback earlier on, we are going to pull that into the review session itself. What is interesting is that at the bottom here, you could see that if we like to, we can also incorporate certain succession plans that we have in the organization and include this succession plan as part of the discussion. So in my example, there is a succession plan for VP of HR. There's a succession plan for a particular incumbent called Brian Joseph. I've decided to incorporate this plan as part of the talent review. And for some organization, besides succession plan, they are also creating what's known as internal talent pools. So you can have an internal talent pool for general managers, internal talent pools for sales directors, etc. If you have such talent pool that you are developing, you could also decide to incorporate the talent pool as part of the discussion. Going to the other areas, you see that we also have the ability to define who are the panel members that will be taking part in the review. I can also define the review population. So, for example, all the senior directors of the organization and above, etc. So, let's open up the review document itself. So one nice thing about the review document is that it is actually a form of a dashboard. Can I have a quick show of hand? Today, is there any one of you who practice in terms of mapping your employees onto a talent grid? And typically a talent grid will be potential versus performance, but not necessarily that. It can be any other dimensions. Any of you currently practice a talent grid in the organization? Okay, I do see quite a few show of hands. I know some of you perhaps are not willing to share, that's fine. But certainly there are organizations today in this room who practice utilizing a talent grid. And what you're seeing on the screen now is an example of a talent grid. And my example here uses potential versus performance. I have seen customers who use corporate values versus potential as a dimension. I've seen people use competencies versus performance as possible dimensions. However, the one I have here is potential versus performance. And as you can see, I'm using a 9-box. Some of you might be using a 4-box or 12-box. And the meaning behind the box is, of course, your definition. Now, if I want to, I will now be able to look at how my talent in the organization is being distributed according to the different dimensions. So this was the initial feedback that the manager had provided. I could see that in my top talent box, I got two employees, Joseph and Guy Matran, and so on. Now, at the moment, I do not want to focus on the specific people. What I'd like to show you is the distribution of the talent in my organization. And one way of doing it, or understanding my talent distribution, is to understand how are they being distributed by location. So right now, I now have the ability to see I have talent located in the different cities, Atlanta, Chicago, Redwood City. But if I want to look at summarized information, I can as well. And for some organizations, this might be a better way of understanding how my talent is being distributed. So what I've done is that I have summarized it into averages. The larger the icon, it represents the greater the quantity of talent. The more the talent icon is to the top right-hand corner, it represents a better average quality of talent in a specific location. So I now have the understanding of how my talent is distributed by according to the 3 locations that you see on the screen. Now, of course, when you are trying to understand your talent distribution, you also need to understand the distribution by other measurements as well. A common measurement that I see a lot of customers are interested in is to look at the talent distribution by age bands. Now, this is particularly important if you have a lot of key talent that belong to the baby boomers generation. Now, this is important because for many of them, they are expected to retire over the next 5 to 8 years. Now, if you have a lot of your key talent found in this particular age group, when you are doing your leadership planning, when you are doing your succession and talent planning, you have to make sure that you have enough talent in the younger age group that will be ready to replace your retiring leaders in the next 5 to 8 years' time. So this is a good way of trying to understand, do I have talent, or rather where my talent are being located based on the different age groups. Now, just for the sake of saving some time, I'm not going to go through every single thing, but obviously that you also want to understand how your talent are being distributed based on, for example, ethnic background and gender, if you are looking at talent diversity. Some organizations are also interested to look at how talent are being distributed based on team managers. So that might have an impact in terms of how you design your talent strategy as well. So if you remember earlier on, we were asking the different managers to be involved in providing their feedback on talent. And one of the feedback that we were asking from them was to identify the risk of loss of a particular individual. So now I'm able to incorporate that information, and I can now see, based on where the talent are in the different boxes, what is the manager's assessment of risk of loss for those talent, who are high, who is medium, who is low. And similarly as well, I can also pull in the impact of loss as well. So immediately, I can see that there are some talent who are in my top talent box, who are considered high risk of loss, and who are considered high impact of loss. Now, if I have individuals that belong to that category, in my leadership planning, I have to make sure that we put in place the necessary program, the necessary engagement model to engage these people and prevent them from leaving the organization. So again, imagine your C-level executive or C-level -1 who do not have the necessary intimate knowledge of all the different employees. They now at the talent review stage have the understanding of who these talent are and the likelihood of them leaving, and therefore put in place, as I said, the right strategy. Now, obviously, these are pretty pictures that are very important, but at the end of the day, one of the key objectives of a talent review exercise is to understand where my employees are in the talent grid, and where necessary, we need to change them. So earlier on, we saw that we have a particular employee called Frank, and at the moment, Frank is placed in the box called adaptable talent. Perhaps during the talent review meeting, we are going to discuss, should we move Frank from being a medium potential classification to be a high potential employees? Now, before we can come to that conclusion, the people in the room may say, let's take a look at some of the information of Frank. Well, we can do that easily because this is a integrated system that pulls in all the necessary talent information. With a click of a button, you now have the ability to look at the talent profile, including things like the talent score, including things like feedbacks. So the earlier speaker was talking about feedbacks. So we now have the ability to allow the different employees in the organization to provide online feedback, or what some people call QDOS, on any individual, and this information can be put in and discussed as part of the talent review. I could also be looking at, for example, Frank's experience and qualification. What are the specific skills and education the person has gone through? I could be looking at his performance history. What were the performance rating has he received over the last 3 years? And if I need to, I can drill down and open up the actual performance document itself and look at the comments that were given by the manager, by the peers, etc., etc. Now, obviously, being a talent review, I also be interested to know what are the key goals that this particular individual is working on, and key goals could be related to performance, key goals could be related to development goals as well. I can understand what these are whether they are high priority and whether is he on track to achieve them. So with all this different information on hand, the people in the room may then decide, okay, let's now consider moving Frank from a medium potential to the high potential box. So in order to do that, what I will then do is that I'll take him and drag and drop him into the right box. So this is a drag and drop approach. Now imagine in the past when you are doing a talent review in the organization, someone will be scribbling this down into the binder, and only in the next meeting will you be able to visualize the changes. So now with a drag and drop, you can immediately see and visualize where the different talent are now distributed according to the box that you see here. Now, one of the advantage of having a formal process like this is that when we decide to move Frank to a high potential area or top talent box, it was done with the knowledge and understanding that perhaps one day he might be the new VP of HR. So if we agree that he has the potential to do that, what we can do is that we can as well take Frank and move him and identify him as a candidate into the VP of HR succession plan. So as you can see on the right hand side, I was able to attach the different succession plans that we are monitoring. And in this case, when I open up the succession plan for VP of HR, I get to see who are the different candidates for the role. Frank has just been added. His current state of readiness is not updated. I think he will only be ready over the next 3 to 4 years. So this is something that I can update immediately on the system itself during the discussion. Now, as I mentioned just now, we are also tracking internal talent pools. And one of the talent pool that I have over here is called potential leaders. So if we feel that Frank obviously is a top talent, he should be part of the top, potential leaders talent pool, I can take and drop him into the talent pool box for potential leaders as well. So all done within the system. Now earlier on, you also hear about speakers about, when you are developing leaders, you want to collect feedback, and based on feedback, what are you going to do about it? So in a similar manner, when you are doing a talent review, you will also be identifying many potential actions that need to be taken as well. And these actions will need to be assigned to the different actors who are expected to act on it and complete it. And likewise, for you as HR, you also need to monitor to make sure that these tasks are being completed. So one of the nice things over here is that when we move Frank to become a top talent, we can now come here and identify whether there are any specific follow-up tasks that needs to be created. I can define or describe the task. There is a task type. This is obviously up to you to define what they are. It could be to assign a mentor. It could be to arrange a meeting. It could be to arrange for this person to provide a presentation to the panel during the next meeting, etc. So I can define what the task is, when is the due date, and who is the person responsible to complete this task. It could be Frank himself, it could be Frank's manager, it could be another person in the organization. So the advantage is that these will now be sent to the person's inbox. He will get to see all the different tasks that has been assigned to him, what is the due date, and once he has completed the task, he can update that as well, so that as an organization, you can monitor to ensure that all the follow-up activities are being done by the different stakeholders. Now, of course, when we mention that Frank is expected to become the new VP of HR over the next 4 years, you know what? We have to put in place some form of developmental plan. Today, he is not ready. He will only be ready in 4 years. We do not expect him to magically become ready in 4 years. So what we can do at this stage is that we can identify what are some of the development plans that perhaps we'd like him to go for. It might be to attend training. It might be to go for an MBA if he hasn't had one. And we can add that into the developmental goals. So this will now appear as part of the development goals of the employee. How often have you heard feedback and comments from your managers where they said that every year during performance evaluation, they sit down with the employee and they wonder what type of development plan they need to put in. Now, the development plan is in context of the organization strategy for what you want to do in the middle to long term, and you can actually place that as part of the review process itself. Now, in a similar manner, I could also capture performance goals. So when we identify Frank as being the new top talent, obviously the goals that we expect of him can be different. We want to give him stretch goals for him to develop the necessary skill sets, knowledge, and wisdom so that one day he can be a true leader in the organization. So I can immediately incorporate that into the performance goals as well. And of course, I also want to capture notes. Why did we come to the conclusion that he should be a high potential? Why is he going to be the next VP of HR? Let's capture that information as part of the review. In the past, that's probably scribbled down into a binder somewhere and kept, and you'll be lost after 6 months. Nobody would have remembered why certain tasks was done. So now it is now captured. Now, talking about keeping track of history and what was changed since the last review, I also like to mention that during the session, it might be useful to compare the current distribution of talent today versus what it looked like during the prior meeting, or for that matter, the meeting before that. Now, this is something that many organizations struggle with if you do not have an automated tool to do this. But right now, because this is automated, I simply say, let's look at my talent distribution from the last meeting. I simply slide it backwards, and immediately, all the different positions would have changed. And if I need to, I can now compare how people have moved. Where were they in the previous meeting, and where are they now today? I can actually see whether we have people trending to the right, or we have people trending more towards the left. So all these can be easily visualized using the talent review. Okay, so what I would like to do is that I'd like to show you a bit more around organizations who are focused around succession planning. So I mentioned that as part of the talent review, it is possible to incorporate the different succession plans that you have into the discussion. Now, for some of the companies out there, you may want to look at the succession plan itself and understand how strong, or rather the succession bench strength that you have for the different succession plans. So this is also possible as well. All the information that you collect for the succession planning during a talent review will fit into a common place, a common location. So just to show you, I'm now going into an area that I call succession planning. Now, for many organizations, succession planning is considered sensitive, so you might want to decide who is allowed access to certain succession plan and who is obviously not allowed to see it. Some succession plan are probably a bit more public, so that one is fine. You can make it more openly available. But right now, I'm logging in as a user called Robert Jackman, and it is telling me that I have visibility into a few succession plans, such as succession plan for a specific role. I could also be I could also have access to succession plan for a specific position, or even a succession plan for a specific individual. In this particular case, I'm looking at a succession plan for VP of HR. I can see that the bench strength for this succession plan is very good. I can see that I have people who are ready today, people who are going to be ready in the short term, and likewise, I'm also cultivating succession candidates that is only going to be ready in the longer term. Now, at any one time, I can double-click and focus on a particular segment. So, for example, I am now interested to look at succession plans for candidates who are only going to be ready in the short term, 1 to 2 years. And for any one of them, if I need more information about individual, as usual, because this is an integrated talent management, I can always say show details. And now I'm pulling out the talent profile of the individual called Linda Swift. I can now look at her QDOS feedback, her experience, her performance history, her goals, her compensation history, etc. Okay. Now, just to show you something else as well, as the person responsible for this particular succession plan, I can decide who I want to include or who I want to invite as a potential successor into the plan. So right now I'm going into a bit more details, and one of the things that I can do in this case is to specify a reference job. So when you are trying to identify potential successor for a particular job or for a particular position, you want to be able to search across your internal talent pool and identify who are the people that perhaps have a good fit in terms of the type of skills and qualification that's required. In order for you to do that, you may choose and include what we call a reference job, and in this case, the reference job is the VP of HR. Okay, and in this particular area, this is where I decide who could be successor. I could click and select specific individual, or I may want the automated tool to find best fit. So what it is doing now is that it's using the reference profile for Vice President, and for the reference profile, it is saying that it includes the following competencies, honors and awards, languages, memberships, etc. I can now click on the best fit and say based on people with at least 90% fit of the requirement, there are 2 such individuals. Now obviously, if I lower the percentage fit to perhaps say 80%, I am basically casting the net a bit wider, and this will now allow me to look at who else can be included into a plan. So this is just to show you that if you have the necessary technology inside, if you have the talent profile that's been created electronically, you now have a lot more capability in terms of searching through to identify your leaders and do comparisons against specific reference roles that you have and find who are those that has a better fit. So I'm just going to stop the demo over here and just come back to the PowerPoint. So while you are listening to all the different speakers today, and you get to hear some of the many different best practices that you can incorporate, do also consider how are you going to execute that and identify the talents that you have in the organization. Certainly, if you have an automated tool to help you to do that, it will bring a lot of benefit and value to your organization, both for your business leaders as well as your professionals. In this particular case, you are now better focused on the review process itself, rather than to spend time and develop the different talent profile in paper binders and so on. And of course, you also need to be able to understand how your talent is being distributed across the organization. Previously, when you are looking at just a particular talent profile, you are focusing on the details, you're focusing on the trees, but you are not able to see the forest. Okay. So the solution that I was just showing you, it is a mature product that has already been utilized by many of our customers using Oracle's technology. This is just a quotation from one of our customers. In this case, it's a large telecommunications organization called Corp Communication. And what they found was that using the talent review, they found that the meeting was a lot more meaningful. And the reason why is because they are getting true analytics. And analytics is, of course, critical when you are doing your leadership process. Okay. Now, that leads very well to the next slide that I have. So today, many of you could be using oversee a HR system in place in the organization. I also speak to many companies in my travels, and many of them are also sharing with me that they are today trying to go through a HR transformation. And one of the reasons why they are going through a HR transformation is that what they found was the HR system they have in place today was a system that was designed 10 years ago, 20 years ago. Some of them were even designed 30 years ago. And as you have heard from other speakers, what worked in the past doesn't work today and will become even worse in the future. So today, a lot of organizations, when they are going through a HR transformation, they are looking for what's known as a modern HR. So just to share with you, modern HR incorporates these four key components, or what we call key four tenets. One of them is that the HR system has to be talent-centric. Today, it is not about keeping track of the employee personal details. It is really about understanding who are your talent in the organization, and do you have the necessary talent. If you do not have the talent to perform a certain job or role, can we find them somewhere else within the organization? And if not, how can we find them outside the organization? And when you are trying to find talent from outside of the organization, it is not good enough to put a job advertisement and wait for people who are trying to look for a job to come across your advertisement and say, hey, that advertisement looks good, I want to apply. You want to find the best people out there, even people who are not actively looking for a job. You want to know who they are, and you want to invite them to apply for a position in the organization. And obviously, after you find a person to join you, you need to develop and cultivate them as well. Because the more capability you're able to develop in your people, the more successful your organization will be. And of course, talent that you acquire into the organization, you also need to put in place a strategy to retain them. And that includes engagement, that includes the necessary compensation strategy, and so on. Now, the second key tenet that you see on the slide here is around being social and collaborative. So today, because the way we work and perform in our personal life has changed, many of us, we are now very social. We share things through Facebook, through LinkedIn, and so on. Yet at the same time, we are not doing that within the organization. So during the demo that I showed us now, we talk about the ability to engage the managers so that we are able to have a discussion around promotion, around potential, around risk of loss, and so on. So a lot of organizations are now trying to find a way to incorporate social discussion as part of the HR system itself. The third item you see here is being insightful. So many times when I speak to my customers, or in fact customers who are using some other system, they say they have a good HR system, but they do not have the necessary insights. And many times they struggle with getting meaningful data out of it. So just to share with you today, when organizations are looking at modern HR, HR analytics is no longer an option. It is mandatory. It has to be delivered as part of your solution. And examples of analytics include dashboards, include what we call embedded analytics that's included, included during the process itself. And a lot of companies are now looking for predictions. Predictions means telling you what may happen in the future. Example, when people talk about turnovers, they look at who are the people who left in the last quarter, which department were they from, what were their job titles, and so on. Today, many organizations are saying, I want the ability to predict what is the likelihood of a particular employee leaving the company. Is it 20%? Is it 50%? Is it 80%? If you are able to predict who are the employees who are a high flight risk, you can then put in place the necessary strategy to engage them and retain them, and not wait till they put a resignation letter on the table and realize it's too late for you to do anything. The fourth key tenet you see here is around being mobile and engaging. So I'm very confident that in this room, I have more than 100% penetration of smart devices. And the reason I say that is because I myself personally, I carry 3 smart devices. Okay? I have an iPad, I have an iPhone, I have an Android. And quite possibly some of you may not have any, but on average, I'm very confident we have more than 100% penetration of smart device. Now, we are really using our smart device for our personal life. Many of us are really using our smart device for our work life as well. The first thing we do in the morning when we wake up is that we check our emails. That includes our company emails. So it is very natural for us already to use mobile capabilities for work-related. Now we're trying to see how we can extend that to the next stage as well. So we talk about a talent profile. Can you imagine how useful that would be? As a manager, when you travel down to a branch office to meet up with your employees, you have your iPad with you. You can actually look at the talent profile of the people that you are meeting. You can look at what are the goals that were assigned to the particular individual, whether or not the person has completed the goals or tried to complete the goals, what are the development plans that we have already discussed earlier, and is the person working on those development plans. So all these capabilities are now available and accessible through a mobile device. I do not need to go to the office, open up my laptop or computer to access those information. Okay. So just like to mention that, that today the presentation I was focusing on is around the area of talent review, and that is in one particular box that you see here. And this solution, in the case of Oracle, we make this available via the cloud. In other words, if you see some value in this particular solution and say, hey, I want to utilize that in my organization, well, because it is a cloud-based deployment, you can do so easily. It's as easy as saying, I want to subscribe to an email account. There's no hardware you need to procure, there's no installation and so on. It is all subscription-based. Now, I also like to mention that when we are talking about leadership, when we are talking about talent, it actually encompasses a very broad area as well. You could be looking at learning and development, you could be looking at compensation, you could be looking at performance management and goals management. So for many customers, you need to look at a vendor that is able to provide the full spectrum of talent management and HCM capability, and not just one little component and then have your a need to integrate and pull information from other sources. So I'm just saying that something for you to consider. Fortunately for Oracle, because we have been in existence for so long, we are considered leaders in human capital management. And today we have close to 14,000 customers around the world. I also like to mention that these customers of ours, the 14,000, is not just a number, it's the type of customers that we have. The customers that use our solution tend to be enterprise large customers. And for them, leading practices is important. So when we have such customers, we are able to discuss with them, we are able to work with them, and likewise, we're able to understand what are some of the key leading practices are and incorporate this solution into our product so that it benefits everyone else that's using the solution as well. So example of such customers of ours are what you see on the slide. These are only the customers who are using our cloud-based solution. And as you can see, they are different industry, different sizes, different location, all of them using the same solution that is available to you as well. Okay, so with that, I just like to stop my presentation, and if you do have questions, I'm going to stand here and take a few questions. Do you have anything for me? No? If not, I'll say thank you very much. I'll be here for a while. Do look for me during the break if you'd like to have a chat. Thank you.